Why does clothing seem so much worse now? Why do we look in our wardrobes only to see mid staring back at us? People have been talking about the in-shitification of fashion. Clothing is getting worse, from the advent of Shein and Temu selling the worst stuff legally possible, to luxury brands cutting corners to improve margins. Retailers don't want you to care how well or how badly your clothing is made. Discerning customers are bad for business, but they do want you to feel like everything you own is on the cusp of being out of date. The more that happens, the more you're going to come back. I think it's fair to want better for ourselves, to want something that you can wear 1,000 times and still feel awesome in. We want our Steve McQueen jacket, our James Dean bomber, our Carmi white t-shirt. This is Aphex Twin here. How do you tell if your clothing sucks? This isn't a new clothes bad, old clothes good video where I spend 10 minutes yapping about Shein and then tell you all to buy vintage. There's a little bit more going on than that, but we do have to acknowledge how consumer culture has changed from the second half of the 20th century to today. There are 1,001 well-documented forces at play that have tipped the scales into clothing getting worse. Factors like global workforces and access to lower cost manufacture, the rise of shopping as entertainment, and rising GDPs enabling and then normalizing people to rebuy their clothing rather than repair it. More recently, people will point to the ultra-fast fashion business model where clothing is produced very quickly and at rock-bottom prices to encourage frequent and high consumption. Clothing is created and restocked not based on vibes, but huge amounts of up-to-the-minute analytics and sales data. They know exactly what things are trending right this second, and they will make the clothing to support that. Product quality is just not a focus compared to price, speed, and off-the-shelf consumer satisfaction. I bought a t-shirt from one such cursed website for about £2. It doesn't feel great, but it'll do the job well enough to keep people coming back for more. Hopefully without them thinking why it's possible to get something this cheap. People aren't consuming clothing this cheaply out of necessity. Shein's target audience isn't people in poverty. The average Shein shopper is spending $100 a month on this stuff, 60% more than what the average US citizen spends on clothing. And for that money, they get access to huge amounts of clothing, which by design will be worn a handful of times at most. Once that's poisoned your brain, spending $100 for one nice item that you can wear for multiple seasons seems outrageous. 50 different regular t-shirts like this, or this one that was from La Mer, and that was on sale. What a contrast from the good old days when you were one with nature and your hand-knitted sweater was made by some Scottish artisan in a shed, designed to be mended instead of replaced. Consumer demand has pulled quality and prices down. That's why fashion fans often recommend vintage clothing. You get that same rush of getting a great deal, but it's clothing that's much more likely to hold up because it already has. I got this super cool G-Star jacket for about £20 at a charity shop, and this Porter bag here I think cost me $75 from a Facebook group. We should remember it's easy to romanticize that because the only clothing that's survived is the stuff that's worth keeping or repairing. Bad clothing certainly existed 30 years ago, but nobody bothered to keep it. And admittedly, it does take a lot more time and expertise to shop vintage, find stuff that works for you, versus injecting fast fashion directly into the veins. But my point is, $30 or so could get you a pretty bad new jacket or a pretty good old one. The same issue exists with luxury clothing too. The value of the luxury goods market has tripled since the turn of the century. The middle classes want belts and handbags, and they want a lot of them. Big heritage brands are no longer the artisanal craft people their marketing would have you believe. It's still mass-produced, often by the LVMH conglomerate, which owns many luxury brands. Louis Vuitton specifically is noted for having higher margins than many businesses, including Apple. It's comparatively hard to find brands making finely crafted goods in small quantities to cater to enthusiasts, because Louis Vuitton has billions of marketing dollars, celebrity endorsements, and brand cachet. That's not to say these brands are a total waste of money or you should never buy into them. If you enjoy the designs, you like the brand, go for it, why not? But it just doesn't automatically mean the finest construction money can buy. Recently, the illusion of luxury clothing maintaining its value has come crashing down somewhat. Financial Times reported in the Chinese market, which has shown massive growth in luxury fashion, brands have been forced into heavy discounting as consumers rein in luxury spending. When brands like Burberry are selling at 50% off, it really reminds people the disparity between retail price and production cost. Another way clothing is getting worse, in a way that most people don't really talk about, is culturally we like simpler clothing. We are dressing more casually. Suit jackets or sport coats have so many elements which can be of higher or lower quality, from horsehair canvas padding to buttons to stitching. A true luxury product has to get many individual elements right. That means it's very difficult to fake. something quiet, luxury, old money aesthetic. It's comparatively much easier to make a luxury brand t-shirt. Sometimes a brand name alone could be enough. So why has clothing gotten worse over the years? Very simply, it's because that's what consumers wanted. But if you're here, you're probably not most consumers. You're either sick of buying bad clothing or sick of that attitude of people buying things they don't really like only to get rid of them after a couple of wears. These are both ideas I want to address. First, how do we tell if a physical product is good or bad? What do nice materials and construction look like? Many will try and tell you the secret things to look for, often in a 30-second video to make you like it and scroll on. Cheap product uses X, expensive product uses Y. This fabric composition means your t-shirt is expensive. While I have bad news for you, many of these qualities are not objective, but contextual. For example, short staple fiber cotton is used in some of the cheapest t-shirts, where it's more likely to develop holes, shed fiber, and be uncomfortable. In this context, long staple fibers are better, but if you've seen this excellent video from the Iron Snail, you'll know short fiber is used in some of the most expensive artisanal jeans for the unique texture and fading it provides.
The really awkward thing about this video is the cotton in the denim I've called low quality in like 50 different videos.
High GSM or fabric weight makes clothing feel luxurious, but may be too warm, may cause a weird fit, or might be used in a garment that's otherwise badly made. Anyone can use weighty fabric if they want to. Even the country of manufacture, something I've covered in other videos, can give an indication but doesn't tell the full story. European stuff can be badly made, and there are plenty of manufacturers in China who do very specialized and very capable products. Here are some pieces made in China, but using Portuguese cotton to create an extremely good final product. In this case, the Made in China label doesn't really tell us the full story. The best way to navigate this is to look at these physical qualities contextually. Does it match the garment they're being used on? Does it match what I want in this clothing? It is surprisingly hot in the UK right now, so had I followed some TikTok advice to make all of my t-shirts 500 GSM, well, I'd not be having a good time right now. Extremely durable or rugged clothes can be a great indication of quality in some respect, and great if you're working down in the mines, you're going to make maximum use of that. But if you're like me and you've got soft hands and your idea of physical labor is carrying a chalky milk back home, well, maybe that stuff just gets in the way. Of course, there are some physical things we can look to help guide our understanding of product quality. On t-shirts, for example, material tape collars or particularly clean overlock stitching, both hallmarks of clothes designed for the long haul. Zipper brands like YKK and Rakagni generally operate better than cheaper generic equivalents. Bar tack stitches and rivets help prevent rips in high wear areas. On outerwear, seam taping shows an extra expense being made for the sake of performance. I talk about things like this a lot in physical product reviews. There are some great other channels out there like the Iron Snail that I mentioned earlier, Shift Fashion as well, who do that nice mix between education and entertainment. This is where content on this topic tends to end. Getting good clothing is about spotting physical signs of good construction and applying that contextually to the clothing that's important to you. I want a super rugged t-shirt I can do anything in. Okay, here's my checklist of qualities that it needs to have. I will find something that does those. To me, that is only half the story. Let me explain, I think you'll understand. Everyone's heard of the I bought really cheap fast fashion and it fell apart horror story. It's probably happened to you. I remember buying a ASOS knitted jumper a long time ago, and the knit was so loose it just kind of fell into a dress after I wore it a few times. I was a student, I didn't have clothing money like that, so I just kept wearing it. Clothing sucking so much it disintegrates. It does happen, as do more minor annoyances like collars deforming or holes appearing. But just as common, if not more common, is not that our clothing becomes physically useless, but aesthetically useless. Why? One answer is many retailers sell things which are of the moment by design. Your peers might all be wearing something kind of similar, getting involved in a particular style. You want to do the same thing. You make that investment too. Maybe next season they're all moving on and you're feeling pressured to do the same so you can keep participating in fashion. Or once you do buy things from this season, the things you already owned, which previously you thought were fine, well now you feel like they've been superseded. You've got something more on trend than you did before. I think this happens, and happens particularly badly with fast fashion retailers, because they are designed to fulfill a trend in the most watered down or superficial way. They take that one detail, that one thing that people like, but neglect a lot of the details. Now you can buy a mesh or embroidered shirt pretty much anywhere, but often that isn't the thing that makes it look cool on models or influencer types. It's those more subtle details like fabric weight, like the drape, the sizing, the sleeve length, the fit, all of these things. And by default, we're trained not to spot these things, or at least not to articulate which of them makes a shirt cool or not. We just see mesh shirt, so we buy mesh shirt. And then once the mesh shirt hype has worn off, well, you're just left with something not that useful. It was the trend element that was propping it up, and Now we need a new shirt. Some people take the view that to combat this, you should only buy timeless, trend-immune clothing, plain white t-shirts and raw denim only. I disagree. I think it's fine to engage in fashion trends and to be inspired by things that other people are wearing. I do that all the time. It's just a case of paying attention to those smaller details which contribute to the overall look and feel of a particular item. Trust me, it's the fit that'll give your clothing that long-term swag and make it age better aesthetically. Like anything, it's a muscle that needs developing. Being actively involved in fashion, looking at different sources of clothing, saving images and video, looking at cut, fit, proportions, and not just the superficial qualities of the item all help with this. But if something feels off, don't force yourself to like it, even if you can't really articulate the problem. I think you should trust your taste and your instincts, because that item being trendy or having some cool superficial quality is like a band-aid that will fall off pretty quickly, and then you'll be left with something that you don't really like that much. I have absolutely made this mistake, buying things and almost never wearing them, because that feeling of it being slightly off just never goes away. Okay, it's not exactly revolutionary information that fast fashion retailers make you feel the need to constantly buy more and more clothing, but there is a surprisingly similar luxury brand equivalent, and even the most trend-immune labels will participate in it to make it feel like your clothing sucks. Almost every brand re-releases their most popular products, often high-margin ones like t-shirts and accessories, but with little seasonal changes every time. This season, we're using a new, better material. We've got cooler graphics now. We've added some pockets or some other kind of aesthetic detail. I think Prada is a great example. They have their consistent, well-defined aesthetic, but still make those tweaks every season to create something new arbitrarily. Same with sneaker brands releasing minor colorway updates over and over. The old version, maybe the one that you have, is implicitly devalued in favor of the shiny new version. These modified re-releases aren't just allowing more people a chance to get hold of popular items, but a way of encouraging existing buyers to repurchase the same stuff by making them feel dissatisfied with what they already own. It takes a surprising amount of self-assuredness to know that the existence of something supposedly newer and shinier doesn't devalue the things that you already own. We're not talking Intel CPUs here. The newer version doesn't have an extra 10% performance. Oh, you bought the old acronym P30 ADS and not the new ones which have an extra pocket on each side? Time to upgrade, bro. Newer versions of clothing, particularly outside the fashion space, rarely have objectively better qualities. It's all just a matter of opinion. And even when we are talking performance clothing, sometimes things can be a bit of an exchange, or those performance increases can be marginal gains at best. I did this whole video and I didn't turn my cool blue light on. I knew the vibes were off, so at least part of your clothing sucking is psychological, driven by constant new clothing releases. The very fact this happens is great evidence for you skipping on things if they don't absolutely fit the qualities you want. However much retailers will say last chance, limited edition, etc., there is always more clothing releasing down the line. Rarely do we truly need clothing, so I think it's okay to be patient for something you can fall in love with. But Antwon, how can I fall in love with something boring like a t-shirt? Why not? Why can't it be the material you want, the fit you want? Why can't you have something that you put it on and think, hell yeah, every time? I definitely feel that with some of my t-shirts, even if all they're really designed to do is accentuate or complement other things that I want to wear. This process is a constant journey. Okay, you can learn the objective qualities that will make clothing suck on a material level, but what gets you really excited is probably going to change over time, and that's a good thing. That means you're buying clothing on your terms and developing your style in a natural and a positive way. Not one where you feel anxiety that others won't find your old stuff cool anymore, or that you're not as on trend versus your peers. That should lead you to be more intentional with what you're buying, not just from a physical perspective, but a psychological one too. And that's cool to me, and 100% something that I want to keep developing. I might be known as the techwear guy on YouTube and social media and stuff, but the things that I find most interesting has definitely changed over time, and you can compare some old fits versus new ones and see how that subtle shift has occurred. A lot of clothing does suck nowadays, but there's great stuff out there you can feel proud to own if you come at things with this no compromise mindset and a sensitivity to the details that you can get excited about. That's definitely a mantra I'm going to be repeating to myself. If you enjoyed this video and you thought this topic was interesting, do give the video a like. It's massively appreciated, and I'd like to hear what you have to think about this, if you've ever made some of the mistakes that I've made in terms of buying physically bad items, or ones you've just gotten sick of. Either way, thanks so much for watching the video. I will catch you very soon with another one.